So, as I've mentioned, I keep repeating myself, but $7 billion last year in 2022, really a very impressive growth curve almost happening in the industry. And now we're going to be joined by three experts who are going to help us navigate the investment strategies in this investment sector. So we've got Eleanor Davies from VitaDAO, Alex Colville from Age One, and Patrick Burgermeister from Kizoo. Hi, guys.
Hello, Phil.
Hey, Phil.
Hey, great. So Patrick, if I could maybe start with you. Kizoo is probably the most established fund in the panel here. You guys have been at it a while, put it that way. And of course, you talk about category openers when you're talking about your investment strategy. So could you maybe, Patrick, just talk us through that a bit?
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me and for the organization here. Well, Kizoo started in 2016. Not sure whether we were the first, but we're a family office, meaning evergreen in structure. And we'd like to invest another 300 million. That's what is publicly out there as a sum into this space. Under category openers, we somehow understand the opposite of incremental innovation, which is also quite a profitable business model, as we can see from the conventional drug companies, biotech and pharma. However, we demand that a company shoots higher. I have to admit, I adopted a term, it's not my own, from Matt Kaberlein from the University of Seattle. He called it controlled moonshots. So yes, high risk, but still we look deep into the science and we want to see a good team driving it forward. But we're always in the upper right-hand corner. If you have this risk and reward chart that a lot of consultants use, this is really our goal.
And some examples of those, Patrick? I mean, maybe just talk us through them.
Right. Thank you for mentioning Cyclarity already earlier on. That was great. So I have to pick another one. Yeah. Elastrin is maybe another good example, I think, because we'd like to see one of the aging processes, using the plural here, reversed. To many people, this still sounds that, oh, this must be much more difficult than delaying something, right? But I think it also has huge advantages. If you have an approach like removing calcium, that's what Elastrin Therapeutic does, in a targeted way from diseased vessels. There's an antibody involved that recognizes only damaged vessels there. Then the readouts that you choose later on in the clinical trial also should appear much more quicker. As a contrast, maybe if you develop another hypertension drug, there are already like 50 or 60 out there, and then you try to prove that this one is better, of course you have to enroll 3,000, 4,000 patients in a phase 3. However, if you remove calcium plaques, for example, or have another endpoint, and you show reversal of something, you save a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've seen, the governments are starting to sit up and take attention of all of this activity that's going on in the space. So maybe, Eleanor, if we move over to you, of course, VitaDAO is a wonderful new way of people interacting as well as investing in the space. Quite a complex model for those that don't understand DAOs and crypto and so on. So maybe could you just explain how the organization works?
Sure, thank you, Phil. And so VitaDAO, what we are so we're basically a different type of legal setup, and it's quite experimental in that way. But basically, instead of the traditional corporate top-down hierarchy, we are a community-led cooperative. We're also a not-for-profit. And basically, the goal of VitaDAO, its 10,000 member strong community, is to fund and build novel moonshot aging research, translational aging research from the lab, and spin it out via the support of the VitaDAO community. And so what that looks like is that, so the crypto element is that there's a type of community voting part to it. There's also the leveraging the wisdom of the crowds in that we are able to benefit from the collective intelligence of the community, of whom we have VCs, we have biotech operators, we have researchers, PhDs, in order to enhance the quality of our decision making and essentially also provide alternative sources of funding via DeFi, decentralized finance, in order to basically give more shots on goal to bringing these types of novel research into the market.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure we'll dig into it in more detail, because, of course, it is quite a complex model to get your head around until you really are embedded in it. But let's swing over to you, Alex. Of course, you're a newly minted fund, based on some activity that has gone from your co-founder Laura Deming in the past, her activities in the space. Just interested to know, Alex, how did you get on raising your fund? You've come out of the gates with capital at a time when it's hard to attract capital. So what's behind your secret?
Yeah, great question, Phil. And I think for those in the audience who aren't familiar, I could maybe give a little bit of background as to the Longevity Fund. So in essence, Laura and I co-founded Age One, which is the next fund in the series from the Longevity Fund, which Laura herself formed back in 2011. So it's kind of the first fund focused on the theme of longevity. Laura really set out to prove that not only was it possible to invest in the space, but also possible to make money in the space. And she did that very successfully. She's not loud about her accomplishments, but she was able to return the fund several times over within 6.5 years from, in essence, starting investing out of that fund. She's experienced 5 IPOs so far with this theme of investing into longevity. I think that's a cool fact that not a lot of people realize, is that it's like actually proven out that you can make top decile returns investing into the longevity field on, a very reasonable venture timeline of this kind of like 6 to 8 year time horizon. Yeah. So I think that part is pretty cool. But in essence, Age One, the new vehicle, we launched publicly about a month and a half ago now with a $35 million initial closing. And yeah, that process in essence looked like building off of a lot of Laura's traditional investing base, as well as kind of roping in a new institution and a couple other family offices.
Yeah, actually make a very good point there, of course, that from an investor perspective, the exit opportunity comes at that crucial IPO stage. So you're not necessarily having to wait for post phase 3 trial results and readouts to be able to then go to market to then exit. Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting point. And just swinging that over to you, Patrick. I mean, have you had any exits in Kizoo, or are you looking at a status where you're in for the long run with these very early breakthrough technologies?
No exits so far. Well, there was one company, HX, that you all know, but I wouldn't mention that necessarily. However, we're also not under pressure, being an evergreen. There's even sometimes the thinking that early exits may be profitable, but not serving the longevity field much. For example, if you take the phase 1B, phase 2A exits of a large acquirer, there's no guarantee that the new owner of the project will then also be driven by the longevity potential. You always have to choose an accepted indication, obviously. And this may be the only thing that remains afterwards. Of course, we have to show success cases. We have to show that you can make money in this field. However, I personally would be disappointed if I had an exit and then all that comes out of it would be a new eye drug, and the whole longevity potential that would also be there in different indications, or maybe also off-label use, you mentioned Ozempic earlier, would be lost. That would be half satisfying, I think.
No, that's very interesting. And I guess that thinking about all of the panel, effectively, you guys are all getting in at kind of pre-seed to seed stage. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that gives us a sort of weighting to maybe think about a little bit of the contribution that VitaDAO would be making, because really, as I understand it, your Eleanor, your portfolio companies, which aren't kind of portfolio, they kind of come to you for capital raising. This is everything from quite early stage university spinouts, right?
Exactly, yeah. So we focus predominantly on very early stage projects. We also do symbolic equity tickets as well. So we have also funded the likes of Cyclarity, Turn Bio, Ocean most recently. But yeah, as you said, predominantly focused on academic projects.
And what is the sort of average deal size that you invest in? I mean, let me ask you that question, adjuncting with another. So, if somebody was ready to say 500,000, would that be all they need at that point, or would that be 500,000 contribution that VitaDAO would make to perhaps a 3 million round, for example?
Yeah, so if it's an academic project and so VitaDAO is coming in at 500 million, we may also find a contributor, like a syndicate type of investor to come in at that point. And then there will also be basically a collaborative type of approach. Commonly, though, we pretty much lead the rounds with academic projects. Ticket sizes are traditionally 250K, but can also be larger. And they're basically set out in terms of milestones where the community works with the PIs, researchers, in order to develop to the next specific stage for IP generation, generating data. And then basically, if it's sounding like a promising project, then there's also potential to do a top up to double down and also to bring in more institutional capital too.
And so, and just to explore that institutional capital, and then we'll move on. So, is there complexity with a company once it's gone through the cycle of the VitaDAO funding and the concept of IP NFTs? Is that complex going on to the next stage where you've maybe got a group of traditional investors looking as VCs at taking on one of those companies onto the next stage?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that actually, because it's something that we've been given quite a lot of thought to. So basically, the token holders and so holders of the IP NFT, so they are obligated via a drag-along clause to sell back their tokens at a set price from the respective acquirer or strategic. And so this also goes through a type of consensus matching as well. And then it basically comes from on-chain to off-chain and then is basically a segue back into the market.
Okay, so you've got a methodology to play your part at the early stages and then hand off as you go forward. And Alex, your business model is not just capital, right? You're looking. I wouldn't say is it incubating or mentoring? What's your approach to really making sure that your investments are carried through to success?
Yeah, I think it's some mix of all of those in a weird way. But we really focus on just like finding what we think are just like the world's highest potential talent, whether they be from the aging space or not from the aging space. Work with them over a period. Sometimes it takes like 1 to 3 years before they get to that point where they're ready to incorporate, start in essence, a project in the aging space that has the potential to be a venture scale company. And kind of however we encounter talent, we work with that talent. So we have a venture fellow program. We have an EIR program. It's all asynchronous depending on when people come. And then we also just invest in founders who are building kind of a founder-led biotech in the longevity space. So kind of all of the above in terms of the model, some weird mix of incubation. We've also are just starting our first venture creation right now, which is like I think going to be a one-off for us, but it's something that gets me super excited, so we're just doing it anyways. Yeah, so a little bit of a lot of different things, but very focused on just like world's top talent and bringing them into the aging field.
Yeah, great. And just asking a question to everybody on the panel, how do you feel about leaning into the beginning of next year, 2024? Obviously, we want things to pick up, and of course, effectively, there's a point where you guys need to hand off, right? You need new capital to come in. You need scaling money to take those companies through to the next stages. I mean, I'm not asking you to call it because it's very hard to, but how do you feel about next year? Are you feeling any positive vibes?
Who goes first?
I think you have, Patrick.
All right. Well, I presume I'm the oldest in the group here, and I've experienced quite some cycles. I was a biotech analyst at a Swiss bank a while back. It always comes unexpectedly, the turn. And for both a hype cycle but also a trough in the market, people always assume it will continue like that. The nice weather will continue, but now you also find people in the market who say, 2024 will also be very tough and don't expect any sudden surprises. I think 24 will start nicely. We'll look at JP Morgan, of course, big biotech conference. But I already heard some positive news from the US first and some fund managers. And I mean, maybe one fact that is quite strong and based in reality, the closed-end funds, and this is the majority of all investors, right? They have to come back. They have an obligation to invest their money or place their bets within 5 years, and they can't wait another 18 months. And that's how long this ice age, as some people have called it, already lasts.
So, Eleanor, what do you think?
So it's interesting because VitaDAO is basically a combination of crypto builders and also longevity biotech. And so you're kind of dealing with two different animals here. So as far as the longevity biotech side is concerned, I'm very excited about how much the community's upscaled in this time, and also just the quality of outreach and opportunities that are also coming up too. As far as the crypto side is concerned, I'm also getting the impression that it's being taken a lot more seriously. The actual value of token voting and also non-traditional access to capital is becoming more kind of accepted. And basically on top of that, VitaDAO is becoming more known as an organization that's bringing down the barriers for investors, also for like patients to understand the Dealflow process and also like what actually is longevity biotech too. So overall, very, very optimistic.
Okay, that's good to hear. And Alex, of course, you're based on the Pacific West Coast, right? So you're in the area where it's all happening. What are you hearing on the streets out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty dang optimistic. I think as you alluded to earlier, there's so much hype in the aging field, probably like 90% of the field is hype. And so I think it's going to be one of those periods where we see a pretty big culling. But I think quality things will get funded, and particularly moving into next year, we've seen probably 3 or 4 big biotech funds in the US raise huge new funds in essence over the past month. I think what's contributing to this is funds are finally starting to mark down investments, which is allowing the denominator problem of institutional investors to be solved, which is allowing them to put money back into the venture ecosystem. And yeah, everything that we've seen from our portfolio over the past 2 months, things have really flipped a switch from how they were this summer and before. So I'm pretty optimistic.
That's good to hear. And of course, we're leaning into Thanksgiving next week. I mean, do you still think that we'll see action happening at the balance of the year, or is everybody just starting to think about next year now?
I think we'll see a lot of action based on what I'm seeing, but I'm curious what the others think.
That's good to hear. Well, I mean, maybe let's just move on to some of the other areas of science that people are investing in at the moment. We hear a lot about, of course, cellular reprogramming. There are companies in that space that are capitalized, under $10 million, and others that are, as we know, over $3 billion. But that's just one area of the space. Well, any guidance for our audience as to what are interesting spaces that have got potential for the longevity space? Anybody? All right, I'll say pet longevity. How about that? Well, let's get the conversation started.
Could be a door opener. What we at Kizoo think could be one of the biggest fields upcoming, still fledgling, is actually tissue engineering. Because mankind has moved from small molecules, 20th century, then antibodies. Since about 10 years, CAR-Ts and etc., we've seen cellular therapies. The logical next step, also in terms of size, literally, would be tissue engineering. And this would maybe make a much larger impact on health span than any of the previous ones, because small molecules are bound to target one single molecule or maybe a couple of off targets, etc. But with tissue engineering, you can reverse a lot more than you can do by targeting a single metabolic node.
So,
in
so
your
just an example,
23,000 gene
are you
system.
thinking like heart muscles or something of that nature? I mean, how, just so we understand, could you explain it a little bit more deeply for us?
Right. I mean, there's also already Semma Therapeutics, for example, quite a large company that is producing islet cells with children that are without insulin injections for 2 years now, some of them. Yes, cardiomyocytes could be an interesting field. Liver cells, hepatocytes could also maybe be one of the first that could be used, implanted, not only used as a screening tool for pharma companies. That's what most hepatocyte and tissue engineering companies do currently. They cater to pharma for their drug discovery engines.
And obviously, Alex, you're looking at some very interesting stuff, and you're part of a new organization that released a paper yesterday. I can't remember the name of it, so perhaps you could help me with that. But that was identifying some of the barriers to entry in the space. So, what are you looking at in terms of investment categories that you think are going to have, obviously, in the end, returns, but also very breakthrough science?
Yeah, so you're alluding to, in essence, the Amaranth Foundation. So this was a family office where an ultra high net worth, in essence, brought me into a foundation that he was establishing to deploy money into the field of aging. And we really started from the approach of let's roadmap the entire space using a panel of kind of leading industry experts in the aging field. Let's compile our list of quite biased bottlenecks to progress in the field, really from a not a certain time scale, kind of a very long time horizon, like what is holding the aging field back. And so I was very lucky over the past 2 years of working with the Amaranth Foundation to deploy over $100 million into the aging field and investments and philanthropy to move the field forward. And in terms of some of the categories from that get us really excited, both from the fund perspective, but also from Amaranth Foundation, one of which, as you kind of alluded to, pet longevity. You tempted me with that phrase there. I think this kind of fits in the category of like needing kind of more ambition on a regulatory side. The fact that we have not had an aging drug approved in humans, in my opinion, is a big shame. And it really reflects not a lack of science, but a lack of ambition and pragmatism in the space. And that's something that I'm super, super excited that over the next decade, I'm confident we will see a change in. We're seeing it right now with our portfolio company called Loyal, which is working on pet longevity, so increasing the lifespan, healthy lifespan of dogs. They have made tremendous progress in terms of getting the FDA on board with this being an option. They got, in essence, a protocol concurrence from them back in March. Really, really excited to see, in essence, what's going to play out with Loyal over the next couple of years in terms of getting the first pet longevity drug approved. And then kind of on the other end of the extreme, so that on that end of extreme, kind of this like low-hanging fruit, but really ambitious on a regulatory perspective. On the other end of the extreme, we're super interested in kind of similar to what Patrick was saying, tissue engineering, very, very interested in kind of these next generation, second gen aging plays, gene therapy, tissue engineering, organ replacement through xenotransplantation, cell therapy, reprogramming, and kind of the ability of these to give us much bigger effect sizes. However, going to have to be a lot less extreme on the regulatory side, go through established regulatory paths with more of these newer modalities. And one of the examples I'll say there is that there was data that was published about 3 weeks ago now from a company, eGenesis, that was spun out of George Church's lab, where they were able to grow, in essence, take pig organs, a pig heart, make over 50 genetic edits to it, implant it in a non-human primate, and keep a primate alive for over 2 years using this pig heart. And they'll, in the next couple of years, be bringing that into humans. An absolutely mind-blowing technology where it's like one of those moments where the future is going to be very weird.
Yeah, and of course, I guess what you're both referring to there in relation to organ maintenance or replacement, of course, is the concept of keeping using Aubrey de Grey's analogy, keeping the car on the road, but replacing the parts, but the car still continues to go, i.e. the concept of longevity, escape velocity, or maybe even immortality. And I did speak with Eric Verdin last week, who was quite strong in his opinions about other people in the space that are perhaps making the investment category a little less serious, shall we say, by talking at these levels about immortality and living forever. Do you find that with the people that you're speaking to, any on the panel, that people kind of get past that quite quickly and know that this is genuine science, or do you feel that there are some risks associated with people not taking it seriously still?
I would never use words like immortality or living forever, etc. This belongs to religion or philosophy or other fields. What we say at Kizoo is keeping healthy people healthy, and that people may live longer, maybe a lot longer in the future, is a side effect of that. But nobody who is healthy would accept, a decline, pain, dementia, even, or cancer. So I would clearly stray away from these terms.
And do you find that it's? I guess the question wasn't particularly clear. I mean, do you find that there's any negativity associated with that in your interactions with people? So it does come back at you, right? Okay.
Yeah, for investors, exactly. Yeah.
Alex, Eleanor, are you got any comments on that at all?
Yeah, I think the notion of living forever and immortality is a little bit on the extreme side, and it kind of it just sounds a little bit too, if I may, moon boy. So I think we kind of need to take one step at a time, really, and also just kind of help people take us seriously in terms of the work that we're actually doing. We're doing great work, and also just kind of using this type of terminology isn't necessarily the best approach.
Yeah, great. Well, we're leaning into the kind of year end, right? So Thanksgiving for you, Alex, next week, which kind of gets you thinking about Christmas and the new year. So just asking around the panel, just very quickly, looking into 2024, what's exciting you about moving into the new year? Alex, do you want to go first?
Yeah, definitely. I think what's exciting me the most is this new venture creation we're working on, which I think really actually has a chance to get an aging drug approved in humans in the next 10 years. And I would have never seen myself saying that. And so the fact that I've flipped in a month from not saying that to saying that has gotten me super excited. So that's one thing that I'm very excited about headed into next year.
That's great. Eleanor, how about you?
I'm excited about basically using the IP NFT, IPT model more, and basically just showing the world as to what this can do from an alternative financing perspective. We recently spun out our most recent company, Matrix Bio, with Gorbanova. We have others in the pipeline as well that are yet to be brought out. So I'm excited to basically continue showcasing this great work.
Great. And just to clarify, an IP NFT is that, as I understand it, the people that contribute to the IP, they hold tokens in that IP. So therefore, it's not just one inventor effectively on the associated with the discovery. Is that right?
So there's the one inventor who's associated with the discovery. They own the patent. The IP NFT is the on-chain equivalent of that, whereby you can basically raise crowdfunding by selling a portion of that IP NFT. I can also explain more to anybody who would like to learn a bit more about that too separately.
Yeah, great. Well, we will share information, and of course, the smaller cap investors can join you quite easily. Great. So Patrick, you're here to wrap us up. So no pressure. What's going to be big for you next year?
Well, 3 of our key startups should all, if everything goes well, enter the clinic, which will be a huge step for maturity and acceptance. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Okay, wonderful. Well, guys, thanks for jumping in early on the call, which means that we luckily we can all go and get a cup of tea 6 minutes earlier. So thanks very much for you joining us today on the panel, and obviously everybody that joined us from around the world for this Master Investor Conference as part of Longevity Week London. So thanks for all your time. Tim and the team will follow up with contact details. And again, yeah, thanks for joining us. It's been fun.